Hello everyone, I am Andy Wilson, the Executive Director of the Carriage House, and I am here today to talk about one of the most important things in the Clubhouse model as far as I'm concerned, how to develop and sustain the culture of clubhouses. So for me, clubhouses are magical places, intentional communities that are full of hope and belief and encouragement and laughter, places in which people's lives are changed and saved. My old boss at Independence Center, Bob Harvey, used to say, "Andy, farmers don't grow crops." And I would say, "What, Bob?" He would say, "Farmers don't grow crops. What farmers do is they plow straight furrows and they throw down some seeds and they make sure there's enough rain and enough sun and enough fertilizer, and crops just grow. It's what crops do. It's the nature of crops. They grow." And he would say, that's what we're doing in the Clubhouse model. We're making sure that there is hope, and there is need, and there is meaning, and there is opportunity, and people get better. It's the nature of people in the right environment to get better. A friend of mine from Massachusetts says it this way: everyone's got a pile of garbage. And what we've mostly done in traditional mental health is address our pile of garbage. We bring it to therapy and talk about it. We bring it to the clinic and medicate it. We bring it to group therapy and all of us talk about it. But the goal is to deal with our pile of garbage. That's not a bad goal, I think. But what we do in the Clubhouse is not so much about the pile of garbage at all. Instead, what we do is we plant a big tree next to the pile of garbage. And we spend our time on the tree. We talk to the tree and we water the tree and we make sure the tree is growing well and it flourishes, and at the end of the day, maybe you still have your pile of garbage, but it just doesn't seem to matter so much because we have this big, beautiful tree next to it. That's pretty weird, right? The idea that the pathology in your medical record is not particularly interesting, that the Clubhouse is not in the business of fixing whatever is broken with you. We are not going to do anything to you or even for you, but rather we're going to try to create a space, an environment that is so full of hope and meaning and opportunity and love that you are able to find your own path and become the person you want to be. So that's pretty weird. I guess I want to say a couple of keeping it real things here. We are grateful that there are good psychiatrists out there and good therapists and good traditional social workers. Almost everyone I know, including me, is on some really good psych med to help keep the symptoms under control, and thank God. A lot of my friends say these things help us stay out of the hospital and out of jail, and that is a win. But for clubhouses, staying out of the hospital and jail isn't the goal. It's the starting line. The role of the Clubhouse, our specialty, is rehabilitation, recovery, getting our lives back. So you might ask, well, what's so hard about creating an environment? Well, it's been the work of my lifetime. And as a colleague of mine is fond of saying, there's some pretty heavy science behind creating and sustaining a culture that's full of hope and meaning and opportunity. It takes work, it takes structure, it takes patience and experience. It is a beautiful thing, but it's just not easy. So I think that's why we are all here in this workshop, right? To share strategies, successes, challenges in creating and sustaining Clubhouse culture. So on beginnings, it seems to me that at its core, clubhouses are about community. I wrote that sentence years ago, and at the time I was so impressed with it. It seemed so deep and profound, but really it just feels unsatisfyingly vague to me at this point. What exactly do we mean by community, and how do we create it? The activity in a clubhouse, members and staff working together on meaningful and important stuff, is for me the beginning. The tangible bustle and busyness in a clubhouse, the deadlines of projects, the problem solving, the organization, the stuff that smacks you in the face when you step into a good clubhouse, this is the beginning. Not the end for sure, but I think it is the beginning. So let me start by saying I love the kitchen. The work in our kitchen at the Carriage House is hard. It's stressful, it's fast-paced, it's dirty, and it's the best work in the clubhouse. Necessary. Consequential. If lunch doesn't come out by 12 noon, there is hell to pay. So this, I think, in a nutshell, is what makes the work meaningful. When the need is real. It can be a little counterintuitive, I think, at times. When the need is so real, we forget we're doing Clubhouse. We forget that this is psychosocial rehab. We forget that we're young or old or members or staff. This is when the need is real and the work has meaning. We could speak clinically about cognitive restructuring, but I think that the truth is simply that when we're truly needed and there's really meaning, we transcend our limitations and we become a community. I hear you saying, nice, Andy, a little flowery, but yes, okay, meaningful work is a good beginning. So how about some real practical takeaways? I have been kicking around clubhouses long enough at this point to have failed at everything. And when it comes to creating a full and engaging work order day, we at the Carriage House have failed so often that it starts to become possible to see categories of failures. And here are a few: finding good work, making good systems, fostering engagement, and having fun. Addressing each of these categories would demand a workshop in and of itself. There's just so much wisdom and experience in the clubhouse world on these topics. But let me share just a couple of thoughts. One, on finding work. The staff in clubhouses that I've met are very rarely bored. They feel extreme pressure to get a whole bunch of stuff done. So whatever the staff is doing, well, that's already meaningful work. So start there. And then dream huge for your clubhouse. Visit businesses and great clubhouses and steal their cool ideas. Go to conferences like this one and trainings and steal those ideas too and bring them back to your clubhouse. 2, making the work systemic. Meaningful work is only good if people can get involved in it. There are people in this room, to be clear, I'm not one of them, but there are people listening to this presentation who are geniuses at systems. So find them and make them help you. The best clubhouse systems that I've seen have a few things in common. They are broken into small chunks. They are done every day. They are visual. They involve multiple people. The three words that I try to use are accessible, visual, and repeatable. 3rd, foster engagement. And I guess what I really mean by foster is demand. The work we do in a clubhouse is unapologetically for and about members and staff working together. Always and only. The kitchen unit is not only about making the best food for the least money. If it were, well, we would hire a chef. And it is not only about getting a hot square meal to people with limited incomes. If it were, we would open a soup kitchen. The entire point is to create engagement, people working together. 4, have fun. Seems like a dumb one, but in my experience, it's a choice, and it's a discipline, and it matters. So have fun. In thinking about this topic of creating and sustaining clubhouse culture, it seems to me that we spend a lot of time talking, as I just did, about the beginning, how to create a vibrant work order day, and the end, how to help each other with permanent employment and housing. I'm afraid that we spend just too little time talking about the cultural pieces that occur in the weeks and months and sometimes years after someone becomes a member. It seems to me that this connective tissue through the whole thing is relationships. On relationships, I usually think, well, if we get a vibrant work order day rolling, the relationships will just take care of themselves. Honestly, that's the way it looks to me most of the time. But I remember being a young staff in my first clubhouse and watching all of the clubhouse interactions so closely. I was desperate to find out how I was supposed to be in Clubhouse. Learning the tasks was frankly not all that challenging. Learning how to be in healthy, supportive, reciprocal relationships, that was challenging. I think maybe the reason we don't see these things, talk about these things more often, is that they're hiding right here in front of us. They are the things that we should all do to simply be good human beings. They are important in all of our relationships, and they are even more important in our clubhouse relationships because being treated with human dignity and respect is the central ingredient of recovery. It may seem to many of us like this is a no-brainer, that we should all know how to do this. And I don't know, maybe we should, but I didn't. Most of the people that I know who first come into clubhouses, well, they don't. I think that actually relationships in the clubhouse don't just follow a good work order day. I think they are taught, usually by watching the great ones that were here before us. So, with your permission, I would like to share a few of those practical do's and don'ts that I've been taught over the years from my clubhouses. 1, do look at everyone. Take a moment to really see them. And if you don't remember their name, well, ask them. Don't walk by. Don't stare at your phone. Don't keep your eyes on your computer screen. Yes, I know you're busy and important, but none of us are more important than clubhouse relationships. 2, do say thank you and be appreciative all the time. Remember that every member is a volunteer, doesn't need to be here, and every staff is always gratitude starved, so go out of your way to appreciate everyone. Don't be fake. If you start to sound like a kindergarten teacher, you are doing it wrong. We are not thanking our underlings to provide behavior modification. We're thanking each other for the real work of keeping our clubhouse family together. 3, do listen with respect. Expect that everyone is about to tell you something important that you don't know, because very probably they are. And even when they're not, still listen with respect. If someone's not getting the social clues that we need to end this conversation, then you can say, hey, I'm really sorry, but I've got to get on to this other thing. Don't pretend to listen. Everyone knows when you're pretending to listen, and it sends the very ugly message that this person is not worth listening to. 4, do share your thoughts and opinions regularly. We are all better when everyone is sharing. We as a group are smarter than any of us alone. Don't make it all about you. What we do for recreation, what we eat for lunch, what we plant in the garden, we are all essential voices in these decisions, but no individual is the most important voice. A note for staff, this is especially true for you. It is our job to create excitement and enthusiasm around the decisions that our community makes. But sharing your opinion too loudly can sway the opinion of a room. So be part of a conversation, but remember ultimately, it's not about what you want. Pro tip, try using the language, I'm leaning towards, when sharing your opinion, because it allows room for other people to disagree with you. 5, do be gentle in your communication until you know someone well. It's frankly just hard to know if someone's struggling, and if so, what it's about. So always err on the side of kind and supportive until you really know someone. Don't joke at people's expense. Even if you know them and think it's all in good fun, don't do it. There's just too much room to be hurtful. 6, do say real things to people with compassion and grace even when it's hard. Things like, I'm worried that you might be getting sick, and I don't really understand what you're saying here, and it's probably time to take a shower, and what you're doing is making people really uncomfortable. It seems to me that lots of times saying the truth with grace is one of the best ways to build relationships. I usually try to start with a quick story about myself and how I've messed up something. It helps people know that I'm not being judgy. Don't say things that are cruel or rude or mean and think it's okay just because you're telling the truth. It is not okay. It is never okay. People tell the truth all the time without being rude and mean. If you're not sure, my guess is you should ask somebody. 7, do help. Help the community, help each other. Right now, I bet that every single one of us has something with which we could use a hand. Having people is how we get this help, and we are people for each other. Don't think that you have the answers or the wisdom or the professionalism to fix other people or their problems. You don't. We walk with each other through our problems as a community, not as hired gun social workers. I am thankfully reminded regularly by my community that I'm just not as smart or important as I think I am. I'm sure that there are 1,000 more things, a lifetime of do's and don'ts that I have picked up from members and staff in the great clubhouses that I've worked. I am still learning, and more than occasionally, failing to get this right. I should say that in my experience, creating and managing healthy relationships is not easy. It is work and choices and discipline. It is every minute of every day, and it can be exhausting. It is, in my experience, also the most beautiful and healthy and rewarding way there is to be on this planet. So in conclusion, from my perspective, clubhouses are still about community. But I think that I've learned that great clubhouse communities don't just happen. They begin with active and vibrant work order days, loaded with meaning and purpose, and they continue through immediate and accessible employment, education, housing, and connecting it all. Real, reciprocal, kind, and supportive relationships. Perhaps someday the rest of the world will catch up to us. Perhaps we will look forward to a time when families and villages and churches and countries all share a culture full of hope and meaning and compassion. I will look forward to that time. But for now, I am grateful to be with you and with us in our big, beautiful international clubhouse community, working every day to build and sustain clubhouse culture. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your conference.